When I discovered the HOA president was slowly poisoning my mom's water supply, I didn't just get mad. I got even by buying their water rights and cutting them off completely. What would you do if someone was secretly making your family sick just to force you out of your home? I was watering Mom's prized roses when Karen Thompson's shiny black SUV pulled into our driveway. Kicking up gravel, my stomach instantly knotted. Every time the HOA president visited, trouble followed. "Alex," Karen called through her barely rolled-down window, "those garden gnomes simply must go. They violate Section 8, Paragraph 12 of our community guidelines." I set down my watering can. "They've been here for 7 years, Karen. Since Dad died." Karen's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Rules are rules. I've been lenient. But the board is insisting, remove them by Friday, or it's a $200 fine per gnome." As her SUV reversed, I counted the garden gnomes, all 8 of them, each representing a happy memory with Dad. That would be $1,600 in fines if I ignored her. Money we didn't have, with Mom's medical bills piling up. Mom appeared at the screen door, leaning against the frame for support. Was that Karen again? "Just HOA business," I lied, not wanting to upset her. Mom had been having dizzy spells lately. The doctors couldn't figure out why. By that night, I carefully wrapped each gnome in newspaper and stored them in the garage. Dad had bought one every year on Mom's birthday. Now they sat in darkness, like pieces of our happiness being slowly chipped away. Friday came, and I spotted Karen walking the neighborhood with her clipboard. Checking for violations, she paused at our garden, making a show of nodding approval before writing something down. By Monday, we received another notice. Our mailbox was the wrong shade of blue. We needed to repaint it the approved midnight azure from the HOA color palette. "It's just a mailbox," I told Mom as I repainted it. "Not worth fighting over." But the next week, it was our bird feeder, then our wind chimes, then the height of our hedges. Each time Karen visited, Mom seemed worse afterward, more tired, more confused. I started to wonder if the stress was making her condition deteriorate. One evening, as I was taking out the trash, I noticed Doug Thompson, Karen's husband, standing near our water meter at the edge of our property. When he saw me, he quickly walked away, pretending to check his phone. "Everything okay?" I called out. "Just walking the dog," he replied. Though I didn't see any dog with him, I mentioned it to our neighbor, Elaine Rodriguez, who lived across the street. "The Thompsons don't even have a dog," she whispered, leaning over her fence. "And between you and me, Karen's been targeting anyone who voted against her at the last HOA election. Your mom was the only one who spoke up about Karen's plan to double our dues." That night, Mom couldn't keep dinner down. Her skin looked yellow in the bathroom light as she hunched over the toilet. "I think we should go to the hospital," I said, helping her to the car. The emergency room doctor ran tests, but found nothing conclusive. "Could be a virus," he suggested. "Or possibly something environmental. Any changes at home recently?" On the drive back, Mom dozed in the passenger seat. I took the long way. Passing the Thompson house, their lights were on, and I could see Karen and Doug in their kitchen window, laughing over wine glasses. The next morning, Mom couldn't get out of bed. Her hands shook so badly she couldn't hold her coffee mug. I called Dr. Patel, who agreed to squeeze her in. While waiting for our appointment, I walked our property line, looking for anything unusual near the water meter where I'd seen Doug. The ground looked disturbed. Kneeling down, I noticed small droplets of blue liquid on some nearby rocks. My phone rang. It was the hospital. Mom had collapsed in Dr. Patel's office. "We're running toxicology screens," the nurse explained. "The doctor suspects some type of poisoning." Poisoning? My mind flashed to Doug by our water meter. The blue drops. The timing of Mom's symptoms getting worse after Karen's visits. I rushed to the hardware store and bought a security camera. That night, I installed it in our oak tree, pointing directly at the water meter. If Doug came back, I'd have proof. Mom stayed in the hospital 3 days. Her tests showed elevated levels of strange chemicals, but nothing the doctors could immediately identify. Whatever it is, it's causing liver and kidney stress. Dr. Patel explained, has she been exposed to any chemicals? Pesticides, new cleaning products? When we got home, a notice was taped to our door. The HOA was fining us for unauthorized landscaping because I hadn't mowed the lawn while taking care of Mom in the hospital. As I crumpled the notice, my security camera alert pinged. Someone was at our water meter right now. I raced outside just in time to see Doug Thompson hurrying away. Karen waited in their SUV at the curb, engine running. "What are you doing to our water?" I shouted. Karen rolled down her window. "Alex! You're clearly under stress. Perhaps your mother's illness is affecting your judgment." They drove off before I could respond. My hands shook as I checked the security footage. There it was. Doug pouring something from a small bottle into our water line. Karen keeping watch, both of them smiling. I grabbed a water sample from our kitchen tap and the footage from my camera. These people were poisoning my mother, and I was going to make them pay. The water testing lab looked unimpressive from the outside. Just another storefront in a strip mall. But the technician, Dave, took my sample seriously when I explained my concerns. "It'll take 48 hours for complete results," he warned. "But I can run a quick screen for common contaminants today." While waiting, I visited Mom in the hospital. Her skin was gray against the white sheets. Dark circles hung beneath her eyes like bruises. "The neighbors keep asking about you," I told her, trying to sound upbeat. "Elaine brought soup, even Mr. Jenkins from 2 doors down sent flowers." Mom tried to smile. "And Karen? Has she sent another violation notice while I've been away?" I squeezed her hand. "Don't worry about Karen right now." My phone vibrated with a text from Dave. "Call me ASAP." I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. "What did you find?" "Ethylene glycol," Dave said grimly. "Antifreeze, low concentration, but definitely present. I've never seen it in residential water before. You should call the police immediately." I drove straight to the police station with my water sample and video footage. Officer Martinez took my report, but looked skeptical. "The video shows someone at your water meter. But we can't clearly see what substance is being poured," she explained. "And trace amounts of chemicals can get into water systems many ways." "My mother is in the hospital with organ damage," I protested. "The timing matches perfectly with when the Thompsons were at our meter." "We'll investigate," she promised, "but without definitive proof." I left, feeling frustrated. Back home, another HOA notice awaited. Unauthorized security equipment must be removed within 24 hours. They knew about my camera, which meant they'd been watching our house. The next day, I installed 3 more cameras, hidden ones this time. If the Thompsons returned, I'd catch them from multiple angles. At the hospital, Dr. Patel confirmed the findings from my water test. "Ethylene glycol poisoning matches your mother's symptoms. We've adjusted her treatment accordingly, but the damage to her kidneys may be permanent." Permanent. The word echoed in my head as I drove home, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. A voice message waited on my phone. "Malcolm Reed, the HOA treasurer. Alex, we need to discuss these allegations you're making. The board takes homeowner disputes very seriously, but accusing fellow residents of criminal activity without proof has consequences." I deleted the message and called my college roommate, Jamie, now an environmental lawyer. "They're poisoning her slowly," I explained. "Just enough to make her sick, not enough to kill her quickly. They want us gone because Mom opposed their fee increases." "This is serious." "Alex," Jamie said, "if the police won't help, we need to get creative. Tell me everything about Pinecrest Gardens infrastructure." For the next 3 hours, we dug into property records, utility agreements, and the HOA charter. Jamie found something interesting. Unlike most neighborhoods where water was provided by the city, Pinecrest Gardens water came from private wells, managed by a company called Clearwater LLC. Look at this, Jamie said, sending me a link. Clearwater filed for Chapter 11 last month. They're restructuring debt and likely selling assets. Why does that matter? I asked. Because whoever owns the water rights controls the water. Jamie explained, the HOA has a long-term contract with Clearwater, but if someone else bought the company? A plan began forming in my mind. How much would it cost to buy a failing water company? More than most people have lying around, Jamie admitted, but less than you might think in bankruptcy proceedings. I thought about Mom's deteriorating health, the hospital bills, the smug look on Karen's face. I've got savings, and my 401k, and the house has equity. Alex, think carefully. This is a big move. The next morning, as I was leaving to visit Mom, Karen's SUV blocked my driveway. She rolled down her window, smiling like we were old friends. Alex, the board is concerned about your mother. If her health makes maintaining property standards difficult, perhaps it's time to consider assisted living. I know a lovely facility in the next county. My hands clenched into fists. My mother isn't going anywhere. Well, Karen sighed, the neighborhood has certain expectations. We've been patient, but the violations are piling up. The fines now total over $3,000. I never received notices for most of these supposed violations. Karen waved a manicured hand. They were properly delivered according to HOA protocol. If you can't pay, we'll have to place a lien on your property. That's when I knew for certain. This wasn't random harassment. They were systematically trying to force us out. I'll handle the fines, I said calmly. And Karen, I'd be careful about drinking the water around here. I hear it's not safe. Her smile faltered for just a second before she drove away. At the hospital, Mom had visitors. Elaine and 3 other neighbors who had also butted heads with Karen in the past. We don't believe the HOA stories about you and your mom, Elaine said. Karen's been getting worse since she became president, more power-hungry. Has anyone else gotten sick? I asked carefully. They exchanged glances. Not sick. Exactly, said Mr. Jenkins. But my dog died suddenly last month after Karen complained about his barking. The vet couldn't explain it. I showed them the water test results, but not the video. I didn't want to put them at risk. We're with you, Elaine promised. Just tell us how we can help. That evening, I called Jamie's contact at a bankruptcy law firm. After explaining what I wanted to do, I emptied my savings account and applied for a home equity loan. The next day, Dr. Patel pulled me aside during my visit with Mom. Her kidneys are functioning at 40% capacity. She's going to need dialysis, possibly a transplant eventually. I sat in the hospital parking lot, staring at nothing, rage building inside me. My phone rang. Jamie, the initial offer has been submitted, she said. Now we wait. 2 days later, Malcolm Reed left another voicemail. Alex, we've heard disturbing rumors about your intentions regarding Clearwater LLC, the board. Would like to meet with you immediately to discuss water access concerns. They were worried. Good. I deleted the message and checked my hidden cameras. No sign of the Thompsons near our water meter. But Doug's car had driven by our house 6 times yesterday. The bank approved my loan. Jamie's contact called with news. Our offer for Clearwater LLC had been accepted. In 1 week, I would own the company that controlled the HOA's water supply. That night, as I sat by Mom's hospital bed, watching her sleep, I made a promise. Karen Thompson thought she could poison my mother and get away with it. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Blood pumped in my ears as I stared at the lab results in my hands. My hands shook with rage. The water sample from our house contained ethylene glycol, antifreeze. Not enough to kill Mom quickly, but just enough to make her slowly sicker each day. I slammed my fist on the table, rattling my coffee cup. Who does this to an innocent woman in her 60s? I called Detective Rivera immediately. I have proof. The lab found antifreeze in our water, and I have video of Doug Thompson tampering with our water line. The detective sighed. I understand you're upset, but the video doesn't clearly show what substance he's adding, if anything, and finding chemicals in your water doesn't prove who put them there. Are you serious? They're poisoning my mother. My voice cracked. I need direct evidence linking the Thompsons to the chemical. Keep the video safe, and we'll continue investigating. That afternoon, a notice appeared on our door. Bright red paper with bold letters. Violation. Unauthorized surveillance. Equipment must be removed within 48 hours or face a $500 fine. I laughed bitterly. Of course Karen would try to get rid of the cameras that caught her husband. I took photos of the notice and called Mom's doctor to update him on the lab results. We'll adjust her treatment now that we know what we're dealing with, he said. But Alex, she needs to stop being exposed immediately. I'm trying everything, I whispered, watching Mom sleep in her hospital bed, tubes running from her arms. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced our living room until 3 a.m., searching online for anything about HOA water systems. A forgotten memory surfaced. Dad once mentioned something about our neighborhood's unusual water setup. I dug through his old files in the basement until sunrise, sneezing from the dust. In a folder labeled Home Purchase, I found it. Documents showing Pinecrest Gardens water didn't come directly from the city, but through a private company called Clearwater LLC. Curious, I researched Clearwater LLC all day instead of going to work. Their website looked ancient, last updated in 2018. Public records showed they owned water rights to 3 neighborhoods, including ours. More importantly, a recent Business Journal article mentioned they were facing bankruptcy after their founder died. My college roommate, Jason, now worked as a water rights attorney in Colorado. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but I dialed his number anyway. Jason, it's Alex. I have a weird legal question. After explaining everything, Jason went quiet for so long I thought we disconnected. So you're saying this company that controls your HOA's water is going bankrupt? He finally asked. That's what it looks like. And you want to know if you could buy it? My heart raced at hearing my half-formed idea spoken aloud. Could I? Theoretically, yes. Water rights are property that can be bought and sold. But Alex, what exactly are you planning? I glanced at Mom's empty chair, where she should be doing her crossword puzzles. Justice. This could cost everything you have, Jason warned. What's money compared to Mom's life? I replied, my mind already racing with possibilities. That evening, I visited Mom in the hospital. Her skin looked yellow under the harsh lights. Any news on what's making me sick? She asked weakly. I squeezed her hand, debating how much to tell her. Before I could answer, Karen Thompson walked in, carrying a bouquet of lilies. Oh, I didn't know you'd be here, she said with fake surprise. I've been so worried about your mother. Our eyes locked. Did she know that I knew? Was this visit a way to see how much damage she'd done? How thoughtful of you, I said coldly. Mom needs rest now. You should go. Karen placed the flowers down and touched Mom's foot through the blanket. We're all praying for you, Margaret. The neighborhood just isn't the same without your smile. After she left, Mom looked confused. That was strange. She's never brought me flowers before. I gripped the bedrail so hard my knuckles turned white. Mom, I need to ask you something important. Do you trust me? With my life, she answered without hesitation. I might need to do something drastic to make you safe. It might make some people angry. She smiled weakly. Your father always said, Sometimes you need to fight fire with fire. Her eyes drifted shut from the medication. As I left the hospital, my phone buzzed with an email from Jason with contact information for Clearwater LLC's bankruptcy attorney. The subject line read, "Are you sure about this?" I wasn't sure about anything, except that Karen and her cronies deserved what was coming. How far would they go to protect their neighborhood image? "You want to buy Clearwater LLC?" The bankruptcy attorney stared at me like I had two heads. "The company that owns 3 failing water systems, including Pinecrest Gardens?" I nodded firmly, heart racing but voice steady. "That's exactly what I want." "But why?" "The infrastructure needs upgrades, they're behind on their permits, and—" "I have my reasons," I interrupted. "How much?" He named a price that made my mouth go dry. It would take every penny of my savings, my 401k with the penalty, and still need a loan. But Mom's pale face flashed in my mind, and I knew I had no choice. "I'll need 2 weeks to get the money together," I said. Walking to my car, doubts flooded me. Was I crazy? Could I really pull this off? My phone buzzed with a text from the hospital. Mom's kidney function was getting worse. The doubts vanished instantly. The next morning, I applied for a home equity loan and withdrew my retirement funds. The bank manager raised his eyebrows but asked no questions. I called work and requested unpaid leave for a family emergency. While waiting for the loan approval, I visited the county records office and pulled every document related to Clearwater LLC. The clerk, a gray-haired woman named Doris, helped me navigate the filing system. "Interesting company," she commented. "They've held those water rights since 1983. Used to be well run until old Mr. Jenkins died." "Do you know if they have any special powers over the neighborhoods they serve?" I asked. Doris smiled. "Honey, the one who controls the water controls everything. That's been true since the beginning of time." The loan was approved faster than expected. I signed a mountain of paperwork, trying not to think about the massive debt I was taking on. Jason called to check my mental state. "You're really doing this?" he asked. "You understand you'll be responsible for providing water to hundreds of homes?" "I only care about one home," I replied. "But don't worry, I'm not planning to leave anyone without water permanently." "That doesn't sound reassuring," Jason muttered. 3 weeks of sleepless nights and endless paperwork later, I sat in a sterile conference room, signing the final documents, the bankruptcy attorney, still looking confused, but pleased to close the troubled account, slid a folder toward me. "Congratulations," he said. "You now own Clearwater LLC, including all assets, permits, and obligations. The staff password sheet for the digital systems is inside." Driving home with the folder beside me felt surreal. I now controlled the water supply to the very people who had poisoned my mother. The power of it made me dizzy. I stopped by the hospital first. Mom was sleeping, her face thin and drawn. "Doctor." Patel met me in the hallway, his expression grim. "We've removed the toxins from her system, but there's been damage to her kidneys and liver. She might recover partially with time, but some effects could be permanent." Rage boiled inside me. Permanent. She was perfectly healthy before this. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "The good news is she's stable enough to come home next week. You'll need to monitor her closely, though." A nurse approached with fresh sheets. "Such a sweet lady," she commented. "And that neighbor of yours comes by every day with flowers, Karen, is it?" "Says your mom is like family to her." Bile rose in my throat. Karen was coming here daily, playing the concerned neighbor while her husband's poison did its work. I thanked the nurse and sat with Mom until visiting hours ended. On my way out, I passed the gift shop and spotted Karen selecting another bouquet. I ducked behind a display, watching as she purchased lilies and asked the clerk for a card. Through the gift shop window, I could see her write on the tiny card, her mouth curved in what might look like concern to others. But I recognized the satisfaction underneath. At home, I opened the Clearwater LLC folder and found the login information for their billing and water management system. The outdated software took forever to load, but eventually, I had access to every water meter in Pinecrest Gardens, including flow rates, billing, and shut-off controls. My phone rang just after midnight. A number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Alex. This is Malcolm Reed from the HOA board." His voice sounded tense. "We've become aware that you've purchased Clearwater LLC. My heart skipped. How did they find out so quickly? "News travels fast," I said calmly. "The board would like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss this unusual situation." "I'm not interested in meeting," I replied. "Be reasonable," Malcolm's voice hardened. "We all live here. This affects everyone in Pinecrest Gardens." "So does my mother," I said, anger rising. "And she might not live here much longer, thanks to your friends." "I don't know what you're implying, but tell Karen and the board they'll receive official notice tomorrow." I hung up before he could respond. I stayed up all night learning the water system controls. By dawn, I had drafted an official notice to the HOA board. Effective immediately. Water rates would increase by 400% for all Pinecrest Gardens residents. As the sun rose, I walked to our community mailbox and sent identical letters to each board member. Then I drove to the small Clearwater LLC office I now owned and changed the locks. Inside, dusty filing cabinets contained decades of records. In one labeled Pinecrest Gardens, I found something interesting. A contract clause allowing for emergency rate adjustments without prior approval. My phone began ringing non-stop. First Malcolm again, then other board members. I let them all go to voicemail. Only when Karen's name flashed on my screen did I answer. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed. "Managing my business," I replied calmly. "This is illegal. You can't quadruple our water rates overnight." "Actually, I can. Section 7, Paragraph 3 of the original contract. You might want to read it." There was silence. "What do you want?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Let's talk about what you've been putting in my mother's water." Karen banged on my door at 75 say, her face red with anger. "You can't do this. It's extortion," she screamed, waving the water bill in my face. I leaned against the door frame, surprisingly calm. "Is it? Kind of like slowly poisoning an elderly woman, isn't it?" "You have no proof," she hissed, looking nervously at my security camera. "I don't need proof anymore. I have something better. I have control." The phone wouldn't stop ringing all day. Malcolm, the treasurer, called 6 times. Board members I'd never even spoken to suddenly wanted to chat. I let most go to voicemail, but finally picked up when Malcolm called from a different number. "This is unacceptable," he sputtered. "People can't afford these rates." "I have terms," I said simply. "First, a public admission of what Karen and Doug did to my mom. Second, they leave Pinecrest Gardens forever. Third, you create a fund for Mom's medical bills. They're over $200,000 now." "That's outrageous. We can't admit to something with no proof." "Then I guess I'll shut off water service to the entire neighborhood except for my house tomorrow." I checked with 3 lawyers. "It's completely legal." He hung up. 20 minutes later, Karen texted everyone about an emergency HOA meeting that night at the community center. The message called me a neighborhood terrorist who was holding our water hostage. I didn't plan to go, but my neighbor Ted knocked on my door at 6:30 p.m. "You should come," he said quietly. "Karen's telling everyone you're making up stories about her poisoning your mom because you're angry about gnome violations." The community center buzzed with angry voices when I walked in. The room went silent. Karen stood at the front, pointer in hand, showing a slide that read, "Water Terrorist," with my picture below it. "Here he is now," she announced dramatically. "The man who thinks he can bankrupt us all over some silly garden decoration rules." I walked straight to the front. "May I?" I asked, holding out my hand for the microphone. Karen clutched it tighter, but Malcolm nervously nodded at her to hand it over. "I bought Clearwater LLC for one reason," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "My mother has been in the hospital for weeks. 3 separate labs found antifreeze in our water line. I have video of Doug Thompson tampering with our water supply while Karen kept watch. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Karen lunged for the microphone. Lies! All lies! He has no proof. He's just angry because we enforce the rules everyone else follows. Why would I spend my life savings to buy a water company over garden gnomes? I asked the crowd. Think about it. Doug stood up. This is defamation. We'll sue you. An older woman in the back raised her hand. My dog got sick last month after Karen complained about my holiday decorations. The vet found something strange in his blood but couldn't identify it. Another neighbor stood. My kids had stomach problems for weeks after we argued about fence height. We changed to bottled water, and they got better. Karen's face went pale. This is ridiculous. You're all being manipulated. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, I slipped out. When I got home, I found my mailbox smashed and liar spray-painted on my garage door. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. In my inbox was a message with no text, just a video attachment. It showed Karen and Doug arguing in their garage. They can't prove anything, Doug was saying. Pouring liquid from a container labeled antifreeze into a smaller bottle. Just a few drops in the right places, and problem neighbors solved themselves. I forwarded the email to everyone in the HOA directory. By noon, police cars lined our street as they led Karen and Doug away in handcuffs. I stood watching from my window, wondering who had sent me the video and why they'd waited until now to share it. My phone rang. It was the hospital. Mom's kidneys were failing. I rushed to the hospital, weaving through traffic and running red lights. Mom lay hooked to machines, her breathing shallow. We need to start dialysis immediately, Dr. Patel explained. The damage to her kidneys is severe. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News vans parked at the neighborhood entrance. The police called twice, asking for copies of my water test results and security footage. We found 6 bottles of antifreeze in the Thompsons' garage, Detective Rodriguez told me. One had a modified cap with a small tube attachment. Lab tests show it matches the chemical signature in your water samples. When I finally returned home that night, 30 neighbors stood on my lawn with candles. Ted stepped forward, handing me an envelope. We took up a collection for your mom's medical bills, he said. It's not enough, but it's a start. Inside was 100 funds. 3 months settlers in checks and cash. We didn't know, whispered Mrs. Gonzalez, who lived 3 doors down. Karen told everyone your mom was making up her illness for attention. The story exploded across local news. HOA horror. Couple poison neighbors, water over garden gnomes, ran the headline. 3 more families came forward with suspicious illnesses following disputes with Karen. Malcolm called me from a new number, his voice shaking. I swear I didn't know what they were doing, please. You have to believe me. Did you help cover it up? I asked. His silence told me everything. The preliminary hearing was standing room only. Karen and Doug pleaded not guilty. Their lawyer arguing the video was doctored and calling me a vengeful homeowner with a vendetta. Their bail was set at $500,000 each. Malcolm and 2 other board members resigned after text messages showed they had discussed my mother's suspicious illness months ago. The HOA office was flooded with angry calls demanding all board members step down. I received a letter from the district attorney asking if I'd accept a plea deal where Karen and Doug would serve 5 years instead of the possible 20. No, I replied. They tried to kill my mother. Slowly and painfully, they deserve the maximum. Ted and 5 other neighbors formed a new interim HOA board. Their first act was suspending all fines and violations pending a complete review of the bylaws. The water company became a hot topic. Lawyers for the HOA argued I'd purchased it illegally, but my paperwork was solid. I announced new rates. Normal for most residents, but a special premium for properties owned by anyone who had served on Karen's board. This is simply a business decision, I explained to reporters. I calculate risk differently for those who supported poisoners. 4 former board members put their houses up for sale the next day. No one bought them. Meanwhile, Mom began to improve. The dialysis worked, though doctors warned she might need a kidney transplant eventually. I spent days researching treatments, nights sleeping in her hospital room. On day 17, I woke to find her watching me. "You look terrible," she whispered, smiling weakly. "You should see the other guys," I joked, tears spilling down my cheeks. The following week, police discovered a journal in Karen's bedside table, detailing every troublemaker she targeted over 3 years. 15 families, 3 pets that died mysteriously, 1 elderly man who moved to assisted living after unexplained health problems. The prosecutor added 14 more counts to the charges. Mom came home 63 days after her collapse. The neighbors lined the street, clapping as our car pulled up. Ted and his wife had cleaned our house, filled the fridge, and put the garden gnomes back in place. Now joined by 20 new ones contributed by neighbors, "We thought you might want to rebuild your collection," Ted explained. The following Sunday, the new HOA board president, Elaine Jenkins, who had apparently despised Karen for years, knocked on our door with an official document. "The board voted unanimously to exempt your property from all HOA regulations permanently," she said, handing me the notarized papers. "And we'd like to name the community garden after your mom." "If that's okay," Mom cried when I told her 2 months later. Karen and Doug accepted a plea deal for 12 years each, plus restitution. During impact statements, Mom spoke directly to them. "I forgive you," she said simply, "but I'll never forget." I transferred ownership of Clearwater LLC to a community trust run by Ted, Elaine, and 3 other neighbors. The proceeds fund medical expenses for all of Karen's victims. Yesterday, we held the ribbon cutting for the Helen Morrison Healing Garden at the community center. Every family brought a garden gnome to place along the pathway. I still keep the security cameras running, though some lessons you only need to learn once.